It's always nice to sing songs like this, and one of the things that always amazes me is when you are coming to a place to preach a message and to talk, and sometimes you don't have the connection. It seems that usually, as a minister is getting ready for a sermon, he'll talk to the music people and they'll line up all the songs. But it's always amazing to me because I speak at a lot of different places, and it seems like the songs always seem to come together somehow with what we're going to say, and it always just seems to work out just right. So thank you so much for that. I am Rick Cherok. Most of you know me, some of you probably don't. But I lead a mission called Celtic Christian Mission. In addition to that, I'm a professor at Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri. It's nice to get into this cool air. That's what I can say about Missouri, okay? It's nice to be in this cool area here. I know it's hot here, but in Missouri, it's smoldering. It is just smoldering. Last week, I was actually in Las Vegas where it was 112 and 114. And don't listen to these people that tell you, but it's dry heat. That means nothing. That means nothing, okay? It's like being in an oven, okay? But let me tell you a little bit about Celtic Christian Mission, then I'll get into our message for this morning. They're going to flash some pictures on the screens here. And I'm not going to go through all the pictures and what they are or anything like that. I just want to tell you quickly about our mission. We started about 8 years ago, probably a little bit before that, we started leading teams to Ireland. And one of the things we found that was really unique in Ireland is it was what they call a post-Christian culture. It's a culture that was once very, very Christian. Many people even today, I mean, sometimes when we're talking about raising funding for trips and things like that, many people will say things like, why are you going to Ireland of all places? I mean, aren't they all Christians over there? Because, I mean, even some of the, well, that one won't be one, but some of the scenes that you'll see crosses and different things like that, because at one time it was a very, very Christian nation, incredibly Christian nation, responsible for huge amounts of evangelism throughout Great Britain and into Europe, and really an incredible place. But since probably about World War II, that has declined dramatically, and that's why they're often called post-Christian, because they've kind of abandoned that Christian faith, and they've bought into the European secularism that is so prevalent in Western Europe. And so what we have tried to do is we've tried to take teams over. We get churches to go, we get groups to go, we arrange, we develop, we connect with ministries. We do quite a bit of work with young people. A lot of the times when we go over, that's where we look at as the opportunities. We have chances to work with young people that maybe we can raise them up in the faith in a good way. We got a contact for, obviously this year we've not been able, I was going to lead 2 teams, and I had a couple of churches that we were going to get over there, and it's all been canceled with the strangeness of this year. And we've been contacted by some of the people. We miss you. We want you guys to come back. We need your help over here. Come back and help us. And so we hope to do that, and we hope to get back hopefully next year if we can get this thing behind us. I'm ready to fast forward to 2021 and move on beyond this 2020. This has been a crazy year. But in any event, that's kind of just a quick overview of what we do and some of the things we're involved with. We're a small group. We have no employees. Everybody's a volunteer. And we just try to get as many people as we can over to Ireland. And we're working on some other avenues of ministry, some other things that we're doing that we hope to expand our ministry over the next few years. So if you have a Bible, today I'd like to talk to you from Daniel chapter 1. Daniel chapter 1. And if you look with me, we'll look in Daniel chapter 1. You know, and whether we like it or not, we're living in a nation that has made some dramatic changes in the last 10 to 20 years. If you're like me, you're finding it hard to believe how rapidly some things have changed, how dramatically some things have changed in our years. Things we would never have dreamed about not too long ago are now demands of society and are totally acceptable in society. Things that we look at and we think, it wasn't too long ago that we would look at this and we would never even imagine such a thing. Let me give you just a couple things here. For instance, in California, at a high school, five students were sent home for wearing shirts that had a United States flag on the shirt because it was Cinco de Mayo. It was the 5th of May. So they were sent home because they had an American flag. This is in California. Okay, this is in California. Hard to believe, isn't it? A judge in North Carolina said, it is unconstitutional for the state to issue license plates that say, choose life. Unconstitutional in North Carolina. You cannot do that. U.S. schools in many places have now decided you can no longer have a Christmas tree, but you can have a holiday tree. A holiday tree. So, when I was a kid, that was never much of an issue. That was, not something that we worried a whole lot about. And furthermore, to take that even a step further, when it comes to Easter, there in Seattle has issued a statement that says, Easter eggs shall be referred to as spring spheres. Spring spheres. Don't you love that? I've got my basket full of spring spheres, So, there's a lot of things that are changing in our world. California passed legislation allowing boys and girls to use the restroom or gym of their choice and join whatever athletic gender they wish to join, whatever athletic team they wish to join based on how they decide, that's just a crazy thing to me. It's like, are you kidding? Really? That's the way it is? And I love this one. This one isn't even an American one, so I'll tell you about this one. In the UK, a job recruiter, his advertisement was rejected in some of the newspapers because it called for reliable and hardworking people. Okay, he had a job, and he's posting it, says, we want reliable and hardworking people, and it was rejected because they said it will offend unreliable and lazy people. Listen, have we gone crazy? That's what I want to know. Have we gone crazy? Things are going nuts around this world. And for those of us who are Christians, this world has made an even more dramatic change. Things are changing in ways that are hard to believe. It was not too terribly long ago when in this country, President Eisenhower, 1954, put under God into the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God, and he put that in there, and it was kind of accepted and widely, heralded as that's who we are. And in 56, just a few years later, Eisenhower made "In God We Trust" the national motto. If those weren't around today and we tried to do that today, what do you think would happen? We would have revolts. It would be crazy. In the public sphere, Christianity is mocked, ridiculed, rejected. You just merely have to look at Hollywood and some of the way things are reported in this world, and you can see that Christianity and Christian morality is not widely accepted. The fastest growing religious classification in America? None. You check off the little box, I'm Protestant or I'm Catholic or I'm Jewish or whatever, and then there's one box that says none, N-O-N-E. The fastest growing religious classification in America, none. We are now aliens in a foreign culture. There was a time when we were Christians, we as Christians were widely accepted and heralded as the mainstay of our culture. That's not the case anymore. That's not the case anymore. And I want to tell you a story about somebody who faced a similar situation. If you look with me in Daniel, we'll talk about this. Around 606 BC, Daniel, 3 of his friends, were taken from their homes in Jerusalem, and they were plopped down right in the middle of Babylon. Babylon was the center of the Chaldean Empire, most magnificent city in the world at this time. Daniel would have, as he'd have been brought into this city, he'd have walked through these magnificent gates, the Ishtar gates. When I was in Berlin last year, a couple years ago, I've been there a couple times, but these have been archaeologically excavated, and they've been set up in Berlin in a museum, and you can walk through, and there's these magnificent gates. They're probably twice the height of this building, this room, and they're yellow and blue, and they've got a glazed color to them, and they're just incredible. And he'd have been led through these Ishtar gates into the city, the magnificent city of Babylon, and this was going to be a place where they're going to try to change everything about his culture, his life, his learning, and who he was. And I want you to look with me as we start going through this. Look with me first, if you will, at verses 1 through 7. In verses 1 through 7, I just want to tell you, God gave Judah to Babylon. God gave Judah to Babylon. So let's read that. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasury of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youth in whom was no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered him to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years, at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. Now among them, from the sons of Judah, were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Then the commander of the officials assigned new names to them, and to Daniel he assigned the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. Judah was the southern kingdom of what was once the United Nation of Israel. These were the people of God. These were the people that God had led out of Egypt, out of bondage. They'd brought into Jerusalem, into the land. They'd built a temple. They had worshiped there. They had followed God, but now they strayed away. And it was in the 3rd year of the king Jehoiakim that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came into this area, and he took over. He just literally took charge of Jerusalem. And it wasn't unusual, as verses 3 and 4 say. When this king came in here, he took some of the brightest and best, and he took them out of Jerusalem, and he took them back to Babylon. He wanted to prevent any kind of uprising. So take the ones that are most likely to lead some kind of uprising. Get them, pull them out of there, take them and put them in Babylon, put them there. And so that's what he kind of did. He got these, and of course the scripture tells us the names of some that he brought there. And what he tried to do with them was he tried to essentially Babylonianize them, okay? Make them into Babylonians. He taught the Babylonian language to them. He gave them Babylonian food. He gave them a Babylonian education. And he even changed their names. It's interesting to notice that. And when you stop and look at that, there's some real significance here. You see the name Daniel. The name Daniel literally means God is my judge. But it was changed to Belteshazzar. Bel was one of the Babylonian gods, and so Belteshazzar means Bel protects his life. So he changed it to say, we're reflecting the Babylonian idea here. And Hananiah means the Lord shows grace. But his name was changed to Shadrach. Shadrach means the command of Aku. Aku was another of the Babylonian gods, the command of Aku. And Mishael, who is like God. El is one of the classic names of God in the Old Testament. Who is like God? But he was named Meshach. Still that the who is like, Mesh, but then Ach is Aku. Who is like Aku? And then finally, Azariah means the Lord is my help, but his name was changed to Abednego, servant of Nebu. Nebu, another of these Babylonian gods. They were having their culture ripped from them. They were being indoctrinated in the ideas of the Babylonians. Everything that they had been raised to know and learn and understand was being taken away from them. It was totally being changed. And folks, just like in Judah, just like these Judeans who were brought into Babylon, America is straying from the faith that once made us great. We are straying away from the very things that defined and built America as a great nation. In 1831, Alexis de Tocqueville was he was from France, and he came to America to study the prison system. And when he came here, he wrote this massive book about America. And I want you to hear what he wrote. These are his words. He says, quote, "There is no country in the world where the Christian religion retains a greater influence over the souls of men than in America." And he went on to describe how this religious faith, this Christian faith, has made this the greatest and freest nation in the world. But it's no longer true. It's no longer true. Like the four men in our story, we are being indoctrinated in the ways of a foreign culture and a foreign world. A world that's different than what it was so many years ago. We are being indoctrinated by our televisions, by our media, by our schools, by our entire culture. In fact, one secular humanist, one guy who promotes this idea of secular humanist thought, is a guy by the name of Charles Francis Potter. Let me read you a direct quote from Charles Francis Potter. Listen to these words. This is kind of scary when you stop and think about it. Let me read exactly what he said. He said, quote, "Education is the most powerful ally of humanism. And every American public school is a school of humanism. What can the theistic Sunday schools, meeting for an hour once a week and teaching only a fraction of the children, do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanistic teaching?" Unquote. That's the obstacle we're facing. And just like Daniel, just like his friends, they were brought from a culture where they had been raised to fear and serve God, and they're being indoctrinated in new ideas and new ways. But it's interesting to note that God granted favor to Daniel. God granted favor to Daniel because Daniel refused to be defiled by his surroundings. He refused to. Look with me if you will. Let's go forward here, verses 8 through 14. But Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, "I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king." But Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servant for 10 days. Let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be observed in your presence and the appearance of the youths who are eating the king's choice food. And deal with your servants according to what you see." So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. God granted favor to Daniel, and Daniel made up his mind that he would not be defiled by the king's choice food. This was probably food that may have been offered to idols. We don't know for sure, but it was the food of Babylon. And he said, "I'm not going to take this. I'm going to reject this, and instead, I'm going to take vegetables and water." And you know, this is kind of a choice that all of us at times need to make. And I definitely need to make a choice for vegetables and waters, but that's not what I'm talking about, okay? I mean, I'm talking about, there's always a time when we need to make a choice of what are we going to accept and take? Are we going to accept what the world tells us? Or are we going to do what we know God wants us to do? What choice are we going to make? It's interesting in Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, in the 11th chapter, Hebrews 11, verses 24 through 26, this great faith chapter of Hebrews 11, it says, "By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, considering the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward." What are the treasures you're seeking? Here's Moses, and he had the treasures of Egypt. We've all seen the movies, the documentaries, all this stuff, all the treasures that come out of Egypt, all the things, and he could have had it all. But he said, it's better to serve God. It's better to have the reproach of Christ than to have all these treasures that the world will throw at us. What choices are you willing to make? It would have been easy for Daniel and the others to blend in with the rest of their culture. Let's just follow what everybody, let's don't make waves, let's just follow along with everybody else, it'll all be fine. But they couldn't do it. You see, Peter tells us, 1 Peter chapter 3, he says, "We are strangers and we are aliens in this world." We're not supposed to fit in. We're not supposed to be like everybody else. We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be set apart. We are called to be the saints of God, the holy people, the people who are set apart and not like this world. One of my great fears, one of the things that really bothers me greatly is that I see so many people who claim to be Christians who are quickly swayed by public opinion. Just like, something comes out on Facebook or something like that, and you see people that jump on board, and I'm like, what are you jumping on board for this idea for? And people follow along with the ways of the world so easily, so quickly. As Christians in a non-Christian land, we are sometimes forced to swim against the stream. We have got to be people who are saying, okay, the world's going to go left, but I've got to go right. I've got to. And there's going to be times when people aren't going to like it. Are you going to live your life for Christ, or will you simply try to make the world love you? Jesus said, "The world hated me. They'll hate you because they hated me first. They hated me. So if you follow me, they're going to hate you." But you know what we do so many times? We think, well, let's just be nice. Let's be friendly, and we'll make them love us. Well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be something that happens. Jesus said no one can serve two masters. Either you'll follow him or you won't. If you love the world, then you're going to surrender your faith. Daniel pursued righteousness. He pursued what was right, and he was blessed. And it's interesting, God gave him wisdom God honored him because he was faithful. Daniel was faithful, and God gave him honor as a result of this. Look again, verses 15 through 21. At the end of 10 days, their appearance seemed better, and they were fatter than all the youths who had been eating of the king's choice food. So the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and the wine that they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Then at the end of the days which the king had specified for presenting them, the commander of the officials presented them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and out of them all not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's personal service. As for every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and conjurers who were in all the realm. And Daniel continued until the first year of Cyrus the king. Because of his faithfulness, God honored Daniel. Daniel and his friends were put to the test for 10 days. They passed with flying colors. No one was found like them. They were put into the king's service. The king found them 10 times better than everyone else. And Daniel continues in this service. I mean, he's faithful, he's committed. God blesses him, and he continues in his service until the first year of Cyrus the king. This is fascinating to me historically. I'm not just talking biblically. Historically, we know that Cyrus was the second Persian king after the fall of Babylon. When Babylon was taken over by Persia, Persia comes in, you're going to have a ruler who takes over, a Persian king, and then you're going to have the second Persian king, Cyrus. And Daniel, he continues right on through the Babylonian kings, right into the Persian kings, and he continues on. He's so well accepted and so well blessed by God. Essentially, Daniel remained faithful throughout the entire Babylonian captivity of the Israelites. In essence, we can look at this historically, and we can tell you for 72 years, Daniel was God's man in Babylon. For 72 years. Isn't that remarkable? Isn't that remarkable? Here's this young man plucked up out of his culture, taken into Babylon. They try to brainwash him and make him what they want him to be, but he stands firm and says, I'm going to stand as God's man. And for 72 years, he remains faithful to God no matter what else happens. As our culture continues to change, folks, how faithful are you going to be? I know it's not comfortable to see our world change. It's not comfortable to swim against the stream. I would love to see a very strong Christian culture in our nation, but I don't know if that's going to return. But nevertheless, we can dare to be a Daniel in this culture. And one of the things that I think is so amazing, and I think is absolutely 100% true, is we live in a culture where people are looking for something of meaning, something of value, something that they're not going to get in this culture. I mean, they're looking for something out there. And the place they're going to find it is through you and me. But only if we continue to live as Daniels in a world that's changing and in a culture that's no longer the Christian culture that many of us are used to. Will you live as a Daniel in this culture? Will you pray with me? God, we thank you for the witness of a guy like Daniel. And Lord, as our world continues to change and to morph into something different than what we expected, I pray, Father, that we might have the courage and the ability to stand strong and to be your person in this world, your man or woman, to stand up against all the craziness that surrounds us. Lord, even as we think about Celtic Christian mission, a guy like Patrick, ripped out of his culture, taken to Ireland, and he ultimately becomes an evangelist who wins thousands in this pagan culture. Help us, Lord, as our culture goes further and further away from you, to be a defining and definitive light to a world that needs to know Jesus. We pray it in his name. Amen.